All right, so I thought I'd get in on some of this YouTube banning and censoring stuff. You can't just let Matt Williams have all the fun. I mean, Doug TenNaples having a great time. I haven't had any videos pulled. I haven't had any videos censored. I only had one video that was shadow banned as far as I know, and it was a video about Nick Cannon, if you can believe that. But I wanted to just say I did watch the Mike Lindell, MyPillow guy, his documentary on the election and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought it was very interesting, and I liked it, and you definitely should watch it, especially if Big Tech thinks it's too dangerous for you to watch. That means you should probably, definitely, 100% maybe watch it. But I was talking to my brother about it, and, you know, there's an analogy that I used when I was talking to my brother, and I think it's a good analogy, I think. To me, it was like reading an article from, like, Answers in Genesis or something that was like, we found a Tyrannosaurus Rex soft tissue, and so that demonstrates that God created the world in 6,000 years ago, not billions and billions and billions of years ago. And it's like, that's interesting. I'm very interested to hear that we've got, soft tissue from a dinosaur or whatever. But to me, I already knew God created the world 6,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I already knew that the world was obviously not billions and millions and billions and trillions of years old. Like, I already knew that. Because I read it in the scripture, I read the Bible, it makes it very clear that God didn't create the world in random, explosions and nonsense like that. Like, that's nonsense. That's a nonsense story. I already knew that. But it's interesting to see the evidence for it, I guess, is what you could say. And I think that's an analogy for this, because any sane person, and I do mean this, I know this is a blanket statement, but that's fine. Sometimes blanket statements are helpful. Any sane person that witnessed what happened on election night knew oh, that's fake. You know what I mean? Like, that's fake. And they stop counting, and then when they start recounting, they've got 30,000 votes just for Biden. Like, that graph is amazing. The one that shoots up like that and all that kind of stuff. Any sane, logical person that saw that knew instantly, oh, this is a fake election. I get it. You know what I mean? This is obvious. And so it's like, did we need to see the IP addresses and the various attacks and stuff like that? We didn't need to see. It's very interesting. But the reality is that people that are saying, well, this is a totally legitimate election, they're not operating in reality. They're not going to see real stuff and change their opinions. They're operating in fantasy upside down world. And it's the same with, like, the people with the soft tissue stuff, right? Like, the people that are committed to operating in the fantasy that is evolutionary mythology, and the Earth is millions and trillions and billions and quadrillions of years old, and all that kind of nonsense. That's a nonsense world. Anyone who's living in that world is going to see the soft tissue from a Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever the evidence is. It doesn't have to be that. It could be anything. And they're going to be like, well, you're a liar. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that you can say to those people. So while it's the MyPillow documentary, I think, is helpful for you to realize that, don't get gaslit by these people. Like, don't be tempted to disbelieve obvious facts. Like, voting graphs don't go like this. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen. Okay, it doesn't happen. You don't just stop counting in the middle of the night, and then when you recount, all of a sudden so-and-so's got 30,000 more votes randomly. Like, that doesn't happen. That's obviously fake. We already know that's fake. That's not real. Don't get gaslit. There's no reason to get gaslit like this. Like there's no reason to get gaslit into disbelieving God. Right? So when you're looking at the creation story, don't try to fit in a billion, trillion, zillion years into something where there's obviously not space for it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Don't live in fantasy world. Don't get gaslit into thinking that you're the crazy one. No, it's not crazy to trust God, right? And if you're a geologist or whatever, and you actually follow the evidence or whatever, you're going to see, obviously, it matches up with what God says, but we didn't need that to know we should trust God over Richard Dawkins. You know what I mean? Like, that's like don't put yourself in that position. So that's kind of how I see this documentary, this MyPillow documentary. It's like, obviously, I mean, I don't really know how you look at it. I don't even know how you determine an IP address. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there's some people that do, but what I do know is that what I saw on election night, that was obviously fake. You know what I mean? That's obviously fake. It's great to have evidence for it. It helps you out, in understanding that you're not crazy. But that's how I see it. It's not going to move the needle for people that are committed to not believing this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, Russell Moore's not going to look at the IP addresses and be like, oh, well, I guess you're right. There was election fraud. Like, he's not going to say that, obviously. He's committed to the zeitgeist, right? So it doesn't matter to him. Half of these guys were calling for hacking into the election anyway. Remember Thabiti calling in for hacking the election? Please, somebody save us from Trump. We're hacking to our election, please. Like, they were probably privy to the plan with the guys like Thabiti and stuff like that. But anyway, so... really like it. If you haven't seen it, watch it on Gab, watch it on Mike Lindell's website. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a giveaway. I've never done this on YouTube before. I'm going to give out 2 MyPillow's in the form of a MyPillow.com gift card to 2 people. And here's what you have to do in order to be eligible for this giveaway. First of all, be a subscriber. Subscribe to the channel. Second of all, comment on this video. It can be a comment full of hate. It could be a comment full of love. All that kind of stuff. Comment on this video and be a subscriber, and you will be eligible to get a MyPillow gift card from me. $50. $50 of MyPillow currency. So you could buy anything you want. You could buy a pillow. Look at this guy. Look how happy he is to have his pillow. You could buy a pillow. You could buy 5 of these with God All Things Are Possible DVDs. I don't know anything about this. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not. But that's your choice. You can buy a MyPillow bathrobe, a throw blanket, a mattress topper. Look, there's so many things here. Look at this guy. This guy's got tremendous products. I mean, the website looks a little weird, but hey, that's fine. But anyway, yeah, 2 people will get a $50 MyPillow gift card if you subscribe to the channel and comment on this video. Anyway, let's talk about something else as well. So I did a video yesterday about an insane story about a woman and her family being publicly called out for not wearing a mask. And I talked to this person a little bit more about this story. There has been no private conversations, nothing. It just went from, you are now being church disciplined for not wearing a mask, like instantly. Didn't know that this person can't wear a mask because of medical reasons. It doesn't matter. They just called her out. And I was telling her, it's like, even if it was really a sin to not wear a mask, like an actual sin, this would still be inappropriate. This would still be an abuse of the pulpit. Like I could just think of it. Like, let's just say there was a person in your church that, I don't know, was wearing yoga pants or something like that, and you have never, ever talked to them about wearing yoga pants. You shouldn't wear the yoga pants, right? It's too revealing for the church service, right? Let's just say that was your position, and you never, ever, ever talked to her about it. You just decided one day to call her out in the middle of the assembly. You can't wear yoga pants, you pagan. Like, even that would be inappropriate if it was a real sin. Like, if you really were like, okay, we're going to talk about, let's make it not yoga pants, because I know that's controversial. Let's make it like revealing clothing of some other kind, right? Everyone agrees it's revealing clothing. It's like, you don't go to her privately and maybe say, you know what, can you put this jacket on? Like, this is a public worship service. We can't really dress like that. Like, you put this jacket on privately. Instead, you just call her out, you pagan! You must remove yourself from the assembly. Like, that's not how Matthew 18 applies all the time. You go to her privately. You talk to her privately. Then you find out, oh, you've got a medical condition. You can't wear a mask. Oh, that makes sense. Instead of instantly going to, now you're like a tax collector to me. It's just so unbelievable. But anyway, someone was agreeing with me that that's a very unbelievable story about the mask thing. She can't believe that a pastor would do that. But she had a question that I've answered a number of times before, but I realized that I've got new subscribers, new people watch my videos all the time, so I figured I'd address it, because I actually just had a conversation with a brother about this in my private life. The guy that I had lunch with this weekend, we talked about this exact issue, about the masks, because this person says, well, what's the big deal? It's just a mask, right? Here's what she says. She says, thank you for the beginning. I know you get stuck on the mask thing, but do you think it's so bad if a church has chosen to meet and do everything else church is normal, but simply asks that the families do wear masks? I don't have a problem with that. What's the actual issue with that if everything else is running like normal and the church is functioning like the church, save the masks? So what her point is like, it's not that big a deal if a church is doing everything else correctly. They're singing, they're having the Lord's Supper, they're doing everything, except what they do is ask you to wear a mask. Is that a big deal? And here's my answer to that. And this answer has evolved over the last year. And I would agree with you. That's not the end of the world. Like, that's not drop dead, like you have to leave the church. It's not the worst thing ever. However, there's two caveats I want to make to that. Number one, the church, it's a small, the mask is just a small thing, you're right. And so then why is it being mandated, right? Like, if it's such a small thing, why don't you just leave it to the conscience of the congregation? And so it's like, I agree, it isn't a big deal. It's just a mask. So then let's drop the issue right there, right? Like, why does this have to become a church mandate if it's not that big a deal as you say? And so it's like, that's the issue for me. It's like, if this really isn't a big deal, like you're saying, then don't do the mandate, obviously. And so that's number one. But number two is the fact that no matter how small it is, it's just a mask. Okay, fine. Let's just say I go with you there. We can't add something to the worship of God to decide whether someone's clean enough to worship God. And that's literally what's happening. You can attend, if you're saying you can attend worship if you have a mask, but you cannot attend worship if you don't have a mask, what you're saying is one way you're clean, the other way you're unclean, you can't be here. And that's not appropriate for a pastor or anybody to decide for God. God has decided what the rules are for someone to attend worship. And one of those rules isn't you have to cover your face. So like, it's a small thing. It's not like they're saying, okay, you have to do a whole list of stuff. You're right. It's just one small thing, but the chasm is humongous between what God requires and then what man is required on top of that. So like, it's a fundamental problem. Yes, it's a small thing, but the Judaizers could have said the same thing about circumcision. Well, it's just circumcision. It's just one thing. I'm not saying you have to do a whole list of stuff. I'm just saying one thing you have to do to be able to worship God. They could have said the same thing. So it's just a small thing. True, it's just a small thing, but it's adding to the worship of God. It's adding a work to the worship of God. It's adding works to grace. And so I would suggest that that's completely inappropriate for a pastor to do. So yes, it is a small thing, but it's completely inappropriate for a pastor to do. Here's the other thing, and I'm going to get a little flack for this because I know there's people that disagree with me on this. I actually don't think it's that big a deal if a church says you might want to consider wearing a mask. I don't think that's a big deal. I know a lot of my friends do. They say, well, you're just telling them to lie. And I get that. I get that argument. If it was me, I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do it. But there's a very big difference between someone saying, I suggest you wear a mask, there's a pandemic, and you have to wear a mask or you can't come here. Like it's the enforcement that's a big problem to me. So if you actually enforce this rule and say, well, we're going to church discipline you if you don't wear the mask, that to me is completely unacceptable. However, I'm allowing a lot of grace, in my opinion, for churches that want to suggest you wear a mask. If they suggest you wear a mask, that's one thing. If they enforce you to wear a mask, I'm sorry, I have to draw the line there. I think everyone should draw the line there. How could you enforce something that God has not required? How can a pastor insist that you do something that God has not insisted that you do? That's an abuse of the pulpit. That's not teaching the word. That's not preaching the word. That's not preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's adding works that you have to do in order to be clean enough for worship. Unacceptable. And so that's my big thing with the masks. It's a theological issue. For sure, about clean and unclean, and it's also a matter of works versus grace and all of that kind of stuff. I hope that's helpful and all of that. Again, if you want to be entered into the MyPillow giveaway, I'll be giving 2 gift cards away, $50 gift cards for MyPillow.com. Subscribe to this channel and comment on this video. I would also ask that you like this video, but I'm not going to check on that. Like the video, comment, subscribe to the channel. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.